Thanks, Todd. Appreciate it. All right, everyone, welcome. We've got some interesting stuff for you today. And I just want to let you know we also have a surprise guest, Jen D'Ambrosio from Today Media. She was a last-minute addition, and we had the pleasure of working together when I was at Today Media, Hudson Valley Magazine, Westchester Magazine. So they're going to all introduce themselves. I just noticed we didn't get her in the marketing in time, so I just wanted to point that out if anybody was confused about who this beautiful woman here is. So we've got some great stuff for you today. I'm going to let everybody introduce themselves. We completely understand, and Todd mentioned, our lives have all been completely upended over the last few months, and I think we've got some great pointers on how to navigate virtual events going forward into 2020 and probably 2021 at this point. So Rich, you want to kick it off and introduce yourself?
Sure. Well, thanks for having me. I'm Rich Falster. I'm Director of Client Relations at Personify. Most people know me as the Trade Show Wonk. I'm our subject matter expert in all things events and now virtual events. And really we work with trade shows and events from smaller sizes all up to, the top 100, 200 size trade shows around the world. So a broad range of clients, and excited to share what we're seeing across our client base and hopefully help the audience to rethink and reimagine. I'm trying to avoid the word pivot. That's what I'm really trying to do. So thanks for having
me. Kathy, great. Thanks, Rich. Welcome. It's great to have met you and Kathy yesterday. So Kathy, welcome.
Hi. Well, thank you very much. And hi, everybody. I'm Kathy Greenler-Sexton. I'm the CEO and owner of Subscription Insider. We are a media company focused on B2B, and we serve subscription executives working and growing membership sites and subscription products and services. And our revenue is memberships and events. And we've been pivoting with some small events and have a big conference this fall called the Subscription Show that I'm happy to share my learnings and any tips and tricks from someone who's out there selling tickets and selling sponsorships and creating some excitement about what we're doing.
Great, thanks, Kathy. Welcome. Jen, hi.
Hi, I'm Jennifer D'Ambrosio. I work for Today Media. I am the Director of Marketing for our New York properties, which we publish Westchester Magazine, Hudson Valley Magazine, 914 Inc., Westchester Home, and then we also have a Westchester Hudson Valley Weddings publication. So with all of those, we have many, many, many events throughout the year for each publication, ranging from 150 people to, 4,000 or 5,000 people. We too have obviously had to pivot. We only got one in-person event in before everything kicked in, I guess you could say. But now we've transitioned all of our events to being virtual.
So two of the three of you managed to say pivot, even though we're trying not to say pivot. All right, great guys, thank you so much. And I think most of you know me, but I am an audience development consultant. I've been an MCMA member for 17 years since I started my business. I miss you all in person. I miss we normally would be having cocktails and getting loosened up for this panel. So I don't blame Rich and Kathy if they got something else besides water in their glass. So we're gonna just start off with a very basic question, like what is a virtual event? How are you guys each defining that? And how is it different from your live events that you were doing before? And I'm gonna pivot to Kathy here and let her start.
Well, I think it's important for us to understand what is an online event. And notice I'm using the term online versus virtual, because virtual is a semi-dirty word right now. We can talk about that in a bit. But an online event can mean a webinar, it can mean a workshop that's a few hours, or it can be a multi-day, multi-week conference. And so you really need to understand what you're trying to produce. And we do all of the above, which is why it's top of mind for me. And we focus on B2B. So I'm sure for everybody else, it might be a slightly different definition.
Great. Jen, you're more focused on the consumer world. So, what does this digital event mean to you guys at Today Media?
It's been difficult because some events you really can't picture doing them virtually until you're forced to do it.
Mhm.
You know, we kind of have a three-headed, you know, event model where, you know, in addition to consumers, we also sell sponsorships. So it's like we've been trying to find ways to keep those sponsors while also, you know, coming up with content that will be interesting to the consumer that they'll want to attend it. You know, and then a lot of our events were, you know, we have wine and food festivals. A lot of it is, you know, restaurants who were devastated throughout all of this. So, you know, one of the reasons why we absolutely had to go virtual was because we knew we did not have, you know, the support and the, you know, the participation from, you know, restaurants and the outside people that we would have. So it's a three-headed monster that we've been trying to navigate through.
Yeah, good luck with that. uh, just have to say, Jen puts on the most amazing events. Best of Westchester, Best of Hudson Valley. It's always an amazing time. So it's going to be tough to replicate that online, but if anybody can do it, you can.
Thank you.
All right, Rich, our trade show wonk. So what does this mean to you?
Well, it's been interesting because, you know, as a software provider, you know, really everything that we've done and our clients do drives to that in-person experience. You know, we've joked about the word experience for a long time, and now that word takes new meaning in the virtual and online sense. And so what we've started to see clients realize, to me, an event like that has four components: content, commerce, community, and connections. And so a lot of it's easily checked off with content. You know, everyone, as they pivoted virtual, that was easy to do online content, you know, but when you start to look at community, a lot of organizations are realizing, wow, we need to harness our community the entire year, before an event, during an event, and after event. And then it's that content and connect, or the commerce and connections, that start to really push, you know, why people sponsor or exhibit, is to get those connections, drive business leads. And so that's sort of been a big adjustment, is to making sure that, you know, we fulfill all those 4 C's, because, you know, that's what often drives revenue for particularly trade shows. And that's been probably the biggest challenge, is making sure that you can, you know, those serendipitous, as we joke about meeting up at the bar, doesn't happen in the virtual world. So you have to make sure your event tech.
Good though.
What?
Good.
It could, yeah. There's
It could.
virtual
Don't say
happy
it
hours.
can. It can.
Yeah.
If you design it right, it can.
Yeah, true.
Absolutely.
With virtual happy hours. Yeah. So, but a lot of those serendipitous things have to be built and programmed in, more so than everything drives you to that in-person event. And so that's my sort of line, has been, you can't plop and drop what you did in person into the virtual. It just doesn't translate. You really have to program it.
I would love to amplify that, because this is a really, really important point for everybody listening to understand. You know, you cannot, if you're watching a theater production, okay, and you're seeing somebody up on stage, just like all of us, if we are presenting, that does not translate to the small broadcast screen. So if you're taking a camera and you're videotaping that theater production and you play it back on your screen, it's not going to be very exciting. So when somebody takes a theater production and they translate it and they interpret it for the small screen on television, they take the essential elements of what that theater production was, and then they reimagine that so it's just as exciting, and all those core things that made that production, it's all included. And so that's what we had to do with our event. And we've had to think through, how do you create those connections? How do you create those serendipitous moments? And we have a lot of different things that we've been building in that are fun and networking, way beyond just a cocktail hour. I think we have like 10 or more different types of networking in our event that we're creating.
That's awesome, Kathy. And just a shout out, we do have virtual happy hours at the MCMA. So check that out on our Facebook. I believe it's 5:30 on Tuesdays, but check me on that. But yeah, so great segue to what kind of tools do you use? What do you recommend? Do you have existing tools that you can sort of pivot to allow for these networking events? I think Rich mentioned yesterday when we were chatting, there's over 100 different platforms now. So what are your recommendations and thoughts on how to enable your digital virtual events?
I think my sort of standing line is, look at what you have first, because there's sort of this immediate desire that we need something new. And what we're finding is that a lot of what you may already have in place with tools and and your partners in your ecosystem may already work with you on. So don't always run out and think you need something new. Evaluate what you have as a starting conversation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think it's,
okay, go ahead.
No, it's important for you to understand what your goals are and what you're trying to achieve. You need to do that before you understand what tech you want to use. And sometimes the low tech version is the right answer for you. For us, we evaluated a lot of different platforms, and in the end, we're actually combining some virtual clubbing software with a 3D exhibit hall, with our core platform that allows networking and roundtable discussions after kind of the webinar type of portion of the session. So we've kind of built our own combination of things to achieve our unique goals. But it's important, and we talked about this yesterday, everybody and their brother offering software is doing the best that they can, but they're maybe one page ahead of you on the direction book or the coding book of getting all that done and out to market. So it's really important for you to understand what your goals are, ask very smart questions of vendors, and understand where their strengths are. If they come from a marketing background, the marketing component of that platform is going to be really, really strong. If they come from a different background, that part of that coding will be very, very strong. So you have to ask smart questions. And I've seen some really great solutions that offer seemingly similar things that probably have about 100K difference in price. So you need to be smart and ask questions.
Mm-hmm. So. Jen, you have some thoughts on that? Is it different in the consumer world versus B2B?
No, actually, it's the same no matter if it's B2B or B2C. You still have to have the right tools, and you have to take the event, think about it, visualize it, and then find the software that will match what your vision is. So it's the same no matter what type of event it is.
When you also have to think about your audience, sometimes, you know, we've talked about this, but you know, your audience may decide how they want to consume this differently. We've had some clients that have polled their membership and they said, if it's not in person, we're not interested. Or if it is hybrid, this is, I mean, so sometimes we all quick to jump to this is what we have to do, but we, you know, sometimes ignore that, you know, how does the audience want to consume it? What are they comfortable with? What do they want? Because that is also going to guide, to Kathy's point, like, you know, you start out with that vision and that strategy before you start going out and implementing.
Definitely. And I think that's good advice for anything, but especially here when the investment can come into the six figures to support these initiatives. And that's going to segue to the next question, which I think is burning in everybody's mind, but monetization of these events from a sponsor perspective, from a consumer revenue perspective. How do you get that done? And Kathy had some interesting points about how you would even onboard sponsors and sort of educate them on how to get the most value out of the event.
Yeah, you know, the analogy I would recommend everybody to think about is when there's a new type of product in the market, you have to do a lot of education. And that's where we are with our sponsors and even attendees about what we're creating, because everybody has a different definition in their head of what an online conference is or could be. So what we're finding when we're talking to sponsors, if they've already been to an event and it didn't achieve their goals, they have a negative predisposition of what an online conference is. So what we do is we talk about what our definition is, because it's not enough just to give leads to people. They need to create that serendipity that Rich was talking about. So we make a point to say, yep, when you come on board, you're going to be part of our attendee box that gets delivered to everybody. We have all these networking and coaching and speed networking and fun networking. We even are going to have a band for the cocktail hour. So we not only tell them what we're doing, we're educating them how they specifically can prepare for it and make the most out of it from a business development standpoint. And that seems to help people with understanding what our particular goals are and our vision for the online conference. But it's education, education, education. Jen or Rich, what are you seeing?
Yeah, and I do have a question, and I think you answered it pretty well, but both Valerie and Kathy are interested in what kind of interactive activities and like 10 networking tips. So I think you did answer quite a bit of that, but Rich and Jen, if you want to add to what Kathy said, the audience is interested in that.
Go ahead, Jen.
So, I mean, with us, I mean, a lot of it, like, we're obviously not getting any of the revenue from tickets. Once we, turned to virtual, we weren't charging for any of our events, just now that we have a couple under our belt and now that we're looking towards the fall, we're seeing whether there is opportunity to put tickets, and, having content that someone might actually pay for. Right now our revenue stream is through sponsorships, so we are missing a whole revenue stream that we normally would have had.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Kathy said it too. It's the way I've sort of said it is, in the traditional sense, everybody on here or any professional, if you were to drop them off in front of a conference hotel or an exhibition hall, a convention center, they could probably walk in, figure out how to get registered, figure out where the lunch is, figure out where the sessions are, and get all those steps that you could probably do pretty much blindfolded. In the virtual world, window, and so every step requires even more education. And what I'm seeing is for those exhibitors and sponsors, because I mean, a lot of exhibitors, you've seen have built big, beautiful 50 by 50 booths, or have these receptions and things, and they don't exist. So then we lean towards sponsorship, and a lot of the go-to sponsorships in the physical world don't exist in the virtual. So that's been really walking everybody through. And what I'm finding is even our most high-tech shows and events and audiences that you think would totally get this virtual world are panicked about when can I log in and when can I get in and what is it going to look like and how am I going to network? And it's funny to see because we just haven't done it, And so I encourage you, if an opportunity exists to participate in a virtual event, I've done several now. We've actually put one on for our clients. Until you do it, I mean, it's like, you can't be a principal unless you've been a teacher. Go to something because it will change your perspective to see as an attendee. I mean, I went through an event that was a plop and drop. It was 4 days, and I don't think I'll ever get those 4 days back, but it really changed my perspective of how I had to run the event. I know we answered that networking question, but I don't know if someone add to that.
No, it's good. I just want to, because the networking thing is important, but we did warn you that we talk a lot. So I'm just, so, the concept of revenue, you can sell paid tickets. And we are, but the thing you need to prepare on the paid tickets is that your sign-up rate is going to skew a lot closer to the live date of that conference. So the other thing I'd encourage everybody to think about is there is your tickets, and you need to understand why people are converting to an online conference versus a live conference. And for everybody, that's going to be a little bit different. And so you need to really think through that and think through what potential upsells there might be based on that. And that's how we've designed our ticket prices and packaging, actually. So
I think the revenue model's evolving. I think in events that were in late March, early April, these first couple months, I mean, the default was free. That was the easy thing, and numbers skyrocketed, and everybody felt like, okay, we were successful. We didn't make any money, probably lost money. Now the models are starting to tweak up. The latest from the Center for Exhibition Industry Research is showing that, the $300 seems to be the new number that keeps getting tossed around, and that's far lower than what most people are used to charging for larger conferences. And so I think it will continue to evolve, one, by how we want to consume it. And I think more clients that we see are starting to stretch it out to say this is the value throughout the year, or there's going to be on-demand content. You're going to have to look at what are those things that people are going to consume? How are you going to spread that out? Because I think ultimately we can't rely on free or very low. The math is just not going to be there. But yeah, I see where people are starting to rub up against because there's so much free content. Every organization is going to have to sit, and part of that's back to talking to your membership and your attendees, and everybody's involved to understand where that, I mean, to me, this is like fine-tuned dials. It's not switches in this virtual world. It's tuning the dials to make sure you can see where this plays out long-term. Hopefully hybrid is the long-term approach, that you'll have always an online component, which will have a different revenue model than an in-person event. Hopefully you marry those and the costs work itself out in the middle. That's my prediction. And I know we still haven't answered the networking question.
Yeah, and Jeff, around the networking, Jeff has a question, and maybe you guys can get a little bit more about different networking ideas, but do you moderate those? Is someone sort of making sure the conversation doesn't skew to something divisive like politics? So are there moderators? Like, just, I think people are very interested in how we replicate this networking thing online.
So I think the first thing you have to do is really understand what activity there is. With the events that we've done thus far, we have our sessions, which we've reimagined as shorter and very interactive. So 30-minute sessions that include breaking people out into small round table discussions so that they can talk about the session that was just presented. And we've gotten tremendous feedback. And from a B2B kind of environment, which what we do for the subscription executives, it's worked out really, really well. In that situation, we need somebody just to help with the mechanics of welcome everybody into the roundtable and then kicking off the discussion. And we also have people who are experts kind of working that through. For other activities, you're going to need your team in and around all the different things, because I was actually just meeting with my team earlier this week on, okay, what do we need if we have this multi-day conference, and we have the roundtable discussions, which I just talked about. We have our networking lounge with private rooms that people can go into. How do you moderate that, and where do people go? We have a welcome desk, so people can always go there. But we agreed that we probably need some of our team going in and making sure everybody's behaving, if you will. But we also have speed networking. We have fun and games that we're doing. So you need to think through what is the activity and how are you supporting that and getting that started. With our speed networking, that'll kick off with somebody on a main stage saying, here's what we're about to do, get ready, set, go, and people go. So it really depends on what specific activity you're doing and how it's being managed, across your attendees.
I'm a big believer in, this is where, affinity plays an important role. And affinity can be from similar titles, similar interests, similar topics, similar, creating these, networking events and things like that. You're going to have to, in general, in my opinion, is bring people of like mind. Birds of a feather flock together. It's true wherever you go. I mean, market research will tell you that too. But that's what helps, I think, facilitate these things to sort of speed them up. Like, we're all of this similar topic. I mean, our virtual event that we held, the most popular happy hour was how we did it, how we pulled off our virtual event, because everybody wanted to hear what that was. That was a topic of interest. And then we put people by similar title to say, challenges of this title. And so then everybody going, oh, you're a director of IT. How are you? Because then you just have a reason. I would agree, a moderator always helps, somebody that, can help facilitate or at least start the conversation and have some topics. But when you put people that will have some immediate interest, that can spark a conversation versus, we may have nothing in common other than we're in the middle of a pandemic, but what we do for our professional careers or how we're solving problems for our team or our clients, those are the kind of things that I think sort of juice those conversations to quickly, accelerate.
Mm-hmm.
Jen, did you want to add anything, or I can tell when you guys want to talk because you unmute yourselves.
No, I agree with everything that they said. You have to have a moderator in there just to keep the conversations going. I know, what I've heard, like, people feel a little awkward, a little uncomfortable at first, especially if they're in a room with some faces that you've never seen before and you don't know. And you need someone to kind of break the ice amongst everybody.
Yeah.
One positive thing I've heard that, go ahead.
Oh no, I was just going to tell you a war story from a smaller event we had this spring, which was I was able to kind of jump from room to room to room to see how it was going. And this was I think our first event, and so we had content experts, but we didn't have room moderators to welcome everybody and get things going really quickly. And it really depended on, some rooms were like gun-ho, they were already in there. And then some people were like, dum, 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 dum. You could hear the elevator music. So of course, when I jumped in, we'd get things going. But it really highlighted to me that you can't assume that the people that are jumping in and starting the conversations know how to. So like everything that we've been talking about thus far, you have to be really purposeful. So whoever is, what are they doing? How are they doing it? What are some of the questions? And really make sure they know. So you jump right into those conversations. And once it starts, people will talk amongst themselves and have a grand old time. But it's getting things started and planning for that.
I've even seen some funny things pulled around an introvert's room where, okay, everyone in this room are going to be introverts. And so we wouldn't normally do this, or at least on the online version, we now have a forum where you're not amongst these people on this Zoom call right now, because you don't want to put us in the extroverts room, right? Because we will take, those are the kind of creative things you can do in the virtual environments, or bring people that may not stand up at the end of a session and ask a question, or may not stand up at a happy hour and introduce themselves, creating some of those other safer environments or areas that may feel like, people of my title understand what I do and no one else does. So if you at least put me in a room with those folks. So those are some things that we could probably even do better in the in-person world that play out a little easier in the virtual world.
So that's really interesting about the introverts room. How did you decide who was the introvert and who was the extrovert?
Self-selection.
So survey.
Generally, I'm clearly an extrovert. Generally, us extroverts will self-identify as extroverts, and even people that lean introverts, then they'll jump, so by self-identification, it was funny to see how people felt like, well, good, I can be in a room where if we're all a little more awkward, it's okay, or, so it's been interesting to see those things. And I've seen it done in person, but now in virtual, it's even funnier, because it's another reason to start a conversation. Like, okay, so we all admitted we're extroverts. Who's going to start? And then it goes.
Interesting. I would think you need a mix of those, or just either no one would talk or everybody would talk.
Yeah. In general, you do, but yeah, it's been interesting to allow some creativity in those things. Or again, people that just truly want to be social. We don't always have to pick the most obvious topics, or those sort of things. I'm missing sports, and put them in a room and then see where it goes.
Yep.
Yeah. So just segueing a little bit to the type of attendees and the structure of the day, are you finding like, okay, everybody's signing up at the last minute, so you're kind of scrambling to figure out who's going to be there. I mean, I'm sitting here watching the attendee list and I'm like, okay, I know them, so what type of person are you attracting? And then I think the answer is it depends, but like the length of the actual session, do you do all day events? Do you do like, how do you structure it, at least the agenda, and who is the audience that you're reaching?
I think all three of us would have a different answer, because Jennifer designs events that are very local, where I'm designing events for business executives across the globe who are working on their computers all day. So our answer is going to be very different. And Rich does all the above. So I think, it really depends on who your audience is.
Yes, and as audience development people, we would figure that out first. But
well, it is hard too, because I think those are the things that you just, you forget as an event planner. There are things that you just consider a default. We are in Chicago. That is therefore the time zone. Not anymore. We may have someone joining from London or from Hawaii, because that's, where they are. And so I think that's where the programs I'm starting to see stretch, shrink, and contract and evolve, because what is a time zone that you can put your keynote at that could basically reach your global audience.
Yep.
Or two, where are the optimal times? I mean, a happy hour at 5 Eastern is a little early in Hawaii, but hey,
got to get creative though sometimes.
Yeah,
right?
yeah, and I would say content overall, I keep saying almost the half rule. If it was an hour, make it a half an hour. If it was a half an hour, make it 15 minutes, because I'm a click, tab, or a touch away from some other distraction, let alone what's evolve us around our house. And so, Kathy, we were all talking about it yesterday, but it's almost like the storytelling. You're going to have to now develop a story to keep me going to the next chapter. And during multiple days, during all this going on, you're going to have to stay in front of your audience with smaller bites and things to keep them going to the next page. Because I've attended a virtual event that I feel like I didn't get the value of it because I kept getting distracted and caught in other things. And then you don't want that as an organizer to have people feel lost. So you really have to keep going in and grabbing everybody.
So, you know, for us, we've taken a 3-day conference and we're doing half days over 2 weeks. And I actually started out at broadcast television, so I'm pulling in all my broadcast television roots here. And we're designing things, and the goal for our team is to, you know, yes, everybody's going to learn, but we want everybody engaged for those 4 hours, so it's going to seem like 1 hour. And I'll tell you a secret. We're all friends here. I'm actually going to be at the anchor desk, the Subscription Show 2020 anchor desk. And maybe, Rich, maybe I'll have to invite you to the anchor desk just to say hello as we're throwing it into a session or something like that. So we're going to have a lot of fun, and we've been brainstorming a lot of different ways to achieve that flow. And we're having contests that people who are there in person can win whatever we're giving away. So that's motivating people to actually focus and show up when, you know, so it's all this stuff. You know, we're known for our content, but we have to program this whole experience for people that they can, you know, take away with.
I had a client recently send me, and here's another, you know, free idea, was they made signs and door hangers that had the show event logo. And it was basically like, please do not disturb, I'm in this virtual event, you know, just to sort of like reiterate that just because you're home or you're in your office and you would have traditionally at this event, you know, maybe you should put on your out of office and it should say, I'm attending this event. And here's the thing I'm going to put on my door to basically say, please don't disturb, because again, we seem to have allowed the outside in, where if we were in person at these events, well, we wouldn't be disengaged like this. It'd be rude. But in the virtual world, we have to start to put these things out, and anything, those little things that kind of even just nudge your, whether they ever put that up on their door or not, it's that subtle reminder to say, you need to tune in.
Absolutely. I think I'm trying to reach a different audience than, you know, obviously both of you. So, you know, we usually typically have our events after work so that people aren't checking their emails. They're not one click away from doing something else. So, you know, 6 o'clock seems to be a sweet spot where people are kind of just, they're done with their day, they're done with their work, and then they can sit back and just kind of relax and watch the event. You know, we try to keep it short and sweet also. We've done 2 awards presentations so far, and we found about 45 minutes is pretty much, you know, a good attention span. When we check like the attendee records the next day, it's everyone was watching throughout the entire time because it was quick moving. You know, we kept everything quick to the point, and we kept everybody engaged.
But you sort of bring up a good point, Jen, that I mean, a lot, because you know that that's the time to engage. And I think the way a lot of folks look at content-driven conferences is there's always this assumption, especially because of webinars, you can always get the content on demand later, where, you know, more of your events, like if you don't show up then, you're not going to see it. You're not going to get to attend the award ceremony. And maybe there's a lesson for all of us to think about, you know, treating it that like, if you don't tune in at that moment or you're not engaged in that moment, you will miss it, because there's this assumption that you'll just always get the recording. And I know I sign up for webinars. I'm just as guilty. I put on webinars myself, and I know about how many people, you know, actually attend and then just want the recording. But maybe that's, you know, you looked at design, treating some like, this is it. This is your chance to engage in this. There isn't an after for you.
Yeah, we have a question from Shirley, and I'm not going to name the conference, but this came up on our call yesterday, team. You know, that people are still sort of anticipating that in-person events will happen, and you know, there's an organization that's got something scheduled for September 9th, non-refundable. Deadline is tomorrow to sign up. And we did chat about sort of the expectations around when live events will happen again, and what are your thoughts on that?
I have some strong thoughts on that. You know, we made the call early to go virtual, and we really spent a lot of time trying to be as thoughtful as possible with that reimagination. and of what the event is that I've talked about for subscription show. But our sponsors, we have sponsors that have prohibited their employees from traveling through 2021. We know attendees are not comfortable attending. Their employers don't want to be responsible should they catch COVID. And then let's think about it. You put a mask over your mouth, okay, and you're 6 feet away. How are you going to be effective networking while you're social distancing? It's going to be very, very different for a while until we get to whatever the next phase is. And we just, you know, we're into 2021 just because of so many of the travel restrictions in the B2B world. And then it's dependent on when we're able to get together and actually network like we're used to doing, and when companies are allowing their employees to travel and do things. I think once that happens, people will be really happy to get out of the house and do things, but I don't think it's going to happen, certainly not by September, in my humble opinion.
Yeah, I absolutely agree with that. You know, we tried to kick the can down the road for many of our events just to see if there, you know, if there was a way to have them in person, smaller scale, you know, but then when you really, really think about it, you know, a lot of ours are eating, drinking, you know, talking to people. You can't do that with a mask on. It just, you know, and then there's always the thought of, if someone catches COVID at your event, do you want that to be associated with your event from now on? So September is very ambitious. I mean, we just made the decision on Friday for all of our events for the rest of the year to go virtual.
I would say what probably is behind those things, and I'm seeing this from the contractual world, is there are a lot of contractual considerations in terms of canceling events and force majeure, and you know, we could have a whole session on event
Force majeure, yes.
and force majeure and what's impractical or infeasible or unadvisable at this point. But and the unfortunate thing is, one, there's that piece. I think those are sometimes, even our own event, you know, there were times that we knew where we were headed, but we couldn't officially announce because of, you know, working through contract negotiations. Where I see clients now are getting caught up is, one, a little bit of analysis paralysis, and wanting to see, is someone else in the industry going to do it first, or is, you know, no one wants to be the first, no one wants to be the last, they want to be right in the middle. And you know, they want to make sure they're making the right decision, but the longer they decide, the shorter the window is to the runway to pivot or reimagine. And so I'm seeing clients, you know, suddenly say, okay, they're up to the do or die time. And, you know, we have clients that are well into Q1 saying, you know, we're going virtual, but we also have clients that are in Q3 saying, no, we're still in person and haven't decided yet. All that really does is, you know, confuse your audiences and frustrate them, because they want to know. Again, barring you can't contractually decide it, that's fine. But if you know, you're just creating a smaller window to market and change and reimagine and things like that. And so I see this sort of rush to do everything, where if they'd had longer, I've had clients that said they just wish they'd had their event in April, because it would have been canceled and they wouldn't have had to make this decision. Now they're sort of, you know, trying to figure it out. The longer you've got a runway, and to start to tell your audiences that, look, here's what we've decided. We're going to get you details all along the way, and you can start to figure that out. We mentioned, I mean, I'm seeing clients that are saying, you know, we'll get a couple hundred people that sign up the day of, because they don't have to fly anywhere. They don't have to make any of these traditional commitments. And that's a whole nother, you know, from a marketing perspective, from a communications perspective, that, you know, you just don't build out that workflow traditionally for an event, because you hope most people have told you they're coming. But now I look at, you know, somebody asked me about doing something next month, and I feel like next month is an eternity from now, let alone be willing to commit to an in-person or any event, pay any money, knowing that I can probably sign up that morning, pay my money, and show up. So that's going to be that you're going to have to start to think about, how do you incentivize people to commit even earlier? So I say give yourself a longer runway.
I second, third, fourth, fifth, whatever, 100th that recommendation. You really need the time to make sure it's done right, and that's just so important.
Definitely. Another quick question about the hybrid events. Rich, you kind of mentioned that you hope this is the vision of the future. What would that look like, you know, if a year from now we could do a hybrid event?
Yeah, I mean, I think that what's going to be interesting is that, we've all sort of mentioned it, that there is going to be a subset of the audience that are going to be roaring to get.
Rutro, Rich froze.
Back on a plane
Okay.
and meet in
Okay.
person. The subs that aren't comfortable yet, and so it says my internet connection is kind of wonky there. Hopefully, you guys still have me. Is that hybrid will be where we're going to satisfy an experience for people that show up in person, and then there is going to be a portion of our content and our sessions and our networking that will be online, and we'll have to merge those. And there'll be different value propositions for the person that attends. I hope the price evens out. That basically says that if I come in person, I get an experience that's worth, say, $1,000, and I attend online, it's worth $1,000. You're going to get different experiences, and you'll get different benefits, but they're both worth the same amount of money because they both have different cost structures. And if you cancel out of both. If you cancel out in person, don't think that you can get our online content. So that's where I think you'll mix and match. And then go back to Kathy's point. Now producing hybrid events is a whole different thing because we've all sat in a session room when there's Q&A and no one has that mic that's running around to hand it off to somebody and the speaker doesn't repeat the question. But now if you have somebody tuned in either live or afterwards, it's going to be a really disconnected experience. So not only have you guys have to start thinking about next year, but it's when you start to go down that direction and you've got two audiences, one in person and one around the world, now we're really in a whole nother scenario.
Yeah, I think the way we need to start thinking about it is a live studio audience with you're broadcasting, you've got your live studio audience, and you're creating that content with the cameras and all that sort of stuff for online. That's definitely one model. Another model that has actually already been done, I think it's the Mobile World Congress or something like that, that has like 30,000 or 50,000 people attend every year. And there's a group from, I think, Argentina or Brazil that they basically take what happens in that live conference, and then the next week they have a virtual conference for all the people who would want to have attended in person but can't. They do it as a virtual event. So that's a very interesting model as well, where you kind of have live and then the virtual experience. So it's, right now I'm focused on delivering our reimagined online subscription show, but I have started thinking the location where we would have had the subscription show in New York is working with us and being very flexible, which is great. So we're trying to work with them on, all right, if we went with a TV audience approach, what would that look like? So, we're going to be learning more in 2021 as we go hybrid.
Yeah, we're all learning quite a lot this year, aren't we? And I love that about your broadcast TV analogy, Kathy. I think that really crystallized it for me when you're thinking about, like, you wouldn't just do, a day-long TV show live, you would have different things. So, so let's see, there's a question. Let's see, what are you seeing in terms of percentage of yes to actually attending? I know that I've probably not attended about 90% of the things I've signed up for. So signups versus attendees, what's your history on that?
Well, I think, first of all, if it's a free event, there's been a lot of free events. So like with any webinar or free thing, whether it's an in-person or online, there's always the registration versus the show rate. And it kind of depends how well you're marketing to those people who registered and getting them online, and how important the content or whatever you're delivering is to them. If it's paid, you're still going to have a lower show rate, especially if part of your package is to access that content on demand. So you need to have some tricks up your sleeve to get them to show up in person. So that's going to be part of your thinking in terms of the programming. But some people just want it on demand. So even if they're paying a hefty price, you're not going to get 100% show rate.
everybody agree on that?
Yeah.
All
We had
right,
a
go
pretty
ahead.
good turnout for our events. I'd say 75% of the people that registered, actually tuned in. Um, but they were more, it wasn't just blanketed event. It was very targeted, for our honorees. We did awards shows. So it was all their family, their friends, their colleagues. So, it
Mhm.
was a different, you have a higher rate of people actually tuning in when they have that personal connection to whoever's being honored and granting out awards and stuff like that. So a little bit different, but we did have very a high success rate with that.
Good.
Some of our clients are seeing, some greater success in certain segments of their audiences because, they're thanking them going, I could have never made it this year, or I've never made it to your event, but given the price, no location, et cetera, I'm coming to your event. So sometimes you have to look at those are the like longer term plays that, okay, maybe you've reduced your revenue model, but you're suddenly bringing in audiences that are now introduced to your event or your show, or, and they see the value and get excited and hopefully do then convert. So that's some of the things. I mean, what is also interesting though is that it's not a clear picture until you sit down and look at the data. Like, our online virtual event, I mean, we marketed something as live. It truly wasn't. We had it all fully produced. And I mean, we had a NASA astronaut that was going to show us cool footage of him fixing Hubble. We weren't going to risk that going down in the middle of that session, but we made it look live and it felt live. And but that was our highest attended event because people felt like that was your one chance to see them, and then there was slow drop offs. So I think it's going to ebb and flow. And to Kathy's point, you're going to have to keep building in reasons to jump back and engage and really kind of, again, tell the story and gamify it a bit to make sure people get engaged, because it is a lot harder now. And what I don't know, or I can't figure out yet is, in general, everyone is consuming a lot more of this content right now because some folks are either on lockdown or shortly going, in some form of, restricted access. And, how that evolves and changes and how we consume, just like we are shopping different now. Will that change over time? Will there be less desire, more desire? Will this become more the norm? That's going to be the harder piece that I think we're all going to have to continue to check the pulse of our audiences to see, how it's working, and then toss out your old post-event survey because that's out the window now. You got to rebuild a whole new thing and think about differently because those same questions, are out the door, and really trying to understand each time, get those information to build the next event.
Definitely. All right, so we have about 9 minutes left, and we wanted to talk about marketing the event, promotion schedule, how that's different. We had this example of someone with an early bird deadline, which doesn't seem to be a thing anymore. So I know you guys have touched on some points, but what are you kind of seeing in terms of promotion? What's working? And Kathy, I liked your analogy when we talked yesterday about sort of the education and then the conversion, which is what we do as marketers, right? You want to, they enter a funnel or a flywheel or whatever we're calling it today. So there's a lot more steps in general to conversion, but how does that differ with a virtual digital event?
Yeah, we talk about this a lot in the Subscription Insider team of leading up to the events. So we're right now in the education phase for Subscription Show 2020. What is an online event? If you participate, what are you going to get? And so we're doing all of that. And we're also anticipating, and we'll have available different classes of tickets. And we're including one that will be on demand. And I know of some of my colleagues across the industry that have had on-demand offerings. They've almost doubled their revenue during the conference because everybody loved the content so much, they signed up for the on-demand upsell afterwards. So you need to be thinking of your marketing in terms of what is going to convert people initially, and then your upsell, cross-sell, if you will. For us, we have our live tickets, and then we have our VIP tickets, which give them special access to sessions of VIPs during the conference, as well as the on-demand content after that. And then we have kind of flash sales that we're using as we get towards the conversion phase. And each sale that we offer is a little bit less than the one previous. So we're trying to motivate people to order sooner than later, but have content. Sorry, my earbud fell out. But have things available for every budget for them so that they can sign up and participate.
I think where I see, marketers struggle is that, before there were clear deadlines in terms of like, this is our room block and this is when to get this right. There were things there was these milestones, I think, in the in-person event world that drove a lot of marketing and things that just made sense. And when you don't either have those barriers or reasons, I mean, I'm working with a group that we have a morning of event email queued up to anyone that hasn't registered. You would never do that for an in-person event. Hey, could you happen to hop on a flight and fly to Denver this morning and sign up for this event and book a hotel? No, you could never do that. In the virtual world, it is not unreasonable for somebody to wake up that morning, get our email and say, hey, perfect day to attend. Or after the fact, hey, sorry we missed you. Here's the on-demand, like Kathy mentioned, the upsell, cross-sell. It's hard because, and I also find that the traditional like way out marketing to drive behaviors and those deadlines, again, asking me to register for something even in December at this point just seems so far off of my radar, and I think most attendees' radar, that's sort of hard. Well, we always market in the summer because that's when we start to get, in this world, it's different.
Yeah, that works with local. I always have that morning of last minute ticket email ready to go that day. Always. But they're not flying in or anywhere, so it's a little easier for me to send those. But our marketing, yesterday on our call, Rich made a good point that, it's all about making the decision and making it, and because, we've been leery to promote all of our events because we didn't know if they were really going to happen or they're in person or not. And now that we made the decision, it's just so much easier to market it. And I would market it just as I would any of our other events, with print, e-blast, digital, social, everything.
Yeah, definitely. So there's a couple more points than questions in the chat, but Bruce is saying there's some interesting hybrid models in leadership and the faith and church space, with your idea, Kathy, of having a studio audience paired with remote locations viewing the show. So that's interesting. He names them Global Leadership Summit and LeaderCast. And then, Shirley was just kind of asking about employers not being allowed to travel and just making the point again, like you'd have to quarantine. It's just physically impossible to sort of bop in for a weekend or a couple day seminar. So I think that this is going to be really helpful as we reimagine how we work and live. So does anybody have any last points they want to make before my wrap-up question?
I just think I've shared to most of our clients that you're not alone. I mean, we're all learning this together, and this is why these are wonderful webinars. Thank you again for allowing us all to participate and joining, because everyone feels like there's an answer book and no one really had it. So don't feel bad. Don't.
Yeah, there is no playbook for this. So the final question, what is your silver lining around this? My example yesterday when we talked is that I've had to be traveling for the last few weeks, and I do Pilates twice a week, and I'm able to do that. I would have normally had to take a couple of weeks off from my sessions, and I've been able to do it. So that's really been a silver lining for me, especially since I'm sitting at a desk all day now, that I get to sort of have my Pilates class wherever I am. What do you guys see as silver linings from all of this in the event space?
I think we're all just getting creative and really imagining some new things for the people and the businesses that we serve. And I think we're going to come up with some really great new products and services and ways of making money and engaging with our communities that we didn't do otherwise. So I think it's a real exciting time to really be going through this. And we are going through this together because we're all imagining and figuring this out all at the same time. And so if somebody feels that they're behind, you're not. We're all figuring this out together. So.
Yeah, Jen?
Good.
I mean, I think, the silver lining that I take is that I've actually learned a lot over the last like 4 months. I mean, I have done so many webinars and training sessions, and I've picked up a new skill that I did not have. So, and with all of these virtual events, you have to, sometimes you're just so doing the same things over and over again that this is forcing you to think outside the box and do a little more creative stuff and come up with some different ideas. So myself, I've learned a lot over the last couple months.
Yeah, I think for me, it's been I used to do a lot of attendee focus groups, and we hear a lot of things and we read a lot of post-event surveys, but the success of in-person events has always sometimes prohibited us from getting creative or doing anything different, because we were all successful at doing it. It worked. Don't break it, or don't fix something that isn't broken. But a lot of the things now that we're discussing were always on the back burner list of things that we should do for the experience have now come to the forefront, and we are probably going to build better in-person hybrid events in the future. But it just took a pandemic to force us to finally bubble those to the top and have some extra time, maybe not commuting, to figure them out.
Definitely. This has been amazing. People are chatting and saying thank you. Todd, if you're not having playgroup over there, could you just hop in and let everybody know when, or Jess, when the link to this will be available, and kind of just give us a little wrap up here, unless anybody has any other questions or last thoughts.
Thank you for having me. This has been really a joy talking with everybody.
Thank you very much for coming on. We really appreciate you coming on, Rich, Jen, and Patty for moderating. The video is recorded, so it will be up within the next couple of days. And I just wanted to mention real quick before we say bye and say a final thank you, that we do have a Summer Sizzler next week, July 28th, with Joanne Persico. It's Zoom access only, so it won't be streamed on Facebook. So you do need to register through the website. And I would love if everyone could just check out our white paper that is also on the MCMA.org. One last thank you, Rich, Kathy, Jen, Patty. Thank you so much for sharing with us today. We really appreciate it. And we hope you have a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thank you very much. Yep. Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.